back in the saddle again for the second time this week. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm joined by co-host Justin Lowery. Justin, after talking to the infamous Bobby O, the owner of the KSWA, you have big shoes to fill as far as being a co-host. Record numbers for the video between Bobby O and I, but we will try our best to deliver even more exciting content this week.
Let's do it.
So I say that, and yet we're going to have to talk at least for a while about Monday Night Raw. And that's going to be tough because I've been watching Raw. I have seen, I would think, probably every single episode, and if I missed any, it would have been like maybe 1 or 2 episodes ever in the mid-90s. It is, at least in terms of like more recent ones that I recall, probably the worst Raw I've seen. And I would know I wasn't as critical as, you know, a 10-year-old boy, so I'm sure maybe some in the 90s were worse, maybe some within the last 5 years, but as far as off the top of my head, it was as bad as I can remember because I'm watching the first segment, second segment, third segment saying, oh, this is a bad start. Then I'm watching the middle of the show saying, this is still bad. When's it going to get better? And by the end, I was saying, this is up there with some of the worst I've ever seen. I mean, it's, you hope that it's a wake-up call, but at this point, we've talked about this a few times with Raw, right?
There is no such thing as a wake-up call because they're not losing any money, so there's no reason to change anything.
With that being said, though, the ratings are going down. They need to get people interested in the weekly programming, in all likelihood, to continue to keep the network numbers strong, which I haven't seen if they've gone down at all. You do get a lot of great content on there unrelated to what's happening on Raw and SmackDown, but the whole idea of the network is people watching for free on TV will then want to subscribe and pay that money, right? I mean, this is eventually going to dry up if Raw's so bad.
I think the people that have the network are your hardcore fans. I don't think your casual fan that tunes in and out ever really thinks of getting the network. Maybe if there was really good product, they would be like, oh man, I can't miss this show or that show. So then they'll buy it, but for the most part, the people that have it, have it. I mean, I'm somebody who has a network, but I find myself watching less and less of programming on regular TV and just watching the stuff on the network that I want. So I'm kind of like the opposite, but that's what they're getting their money from. So they're still getting their $9.99 a month for me, and I'm one of those guys that really aren't watching the TV product.
But you mentioned your hardcore wrestling fans are going to stay subscribers. My question is, and I know that this is a long time in the future, but you have to think forward if you're a major company. Are you going to see diminishing numbers of hardcore fans that are WWE fans if they continue to do this?
That all depends on if another promotion comes up and takes some of the spotlight away. I think the hardcore fans really want something different, something else. If somebody's just a tad bit smart with it, and if this, all elite wrestling thing is real, and it does somehow take off, at least in the short term, I can see a major switch to people shifting their focus, and maybe that's what it will take for McMahon's to especially Vince. I'm not surprised when I found out after the fact that Vince was in charge of everything about Raw. I mean, that completely showed by everything that was. He's so out of touch. It's time for Vince to step down from running weekly television and let Triple H do it, because we all kind of rip Triple H for burying talent, blah blah blah. But he's shown what he's done with NXT, that he knows how to write a current wrestling product.
And 205 Live, right? I mean, that show did a complete 180. Now, I was always a fan of the in-ring stuff with Neville as champion, but they got away from that and they tried to make it more about Enzo Amore and personalities, and they had Alicia Fox on there, but then they got back to the basics, which is these guys are great wrestlers. We're going to make them showcase their great wrestling. That was Triple H's call, from my understanding.
Right, because now when he took over 205 Live, 205 Live got better. And the reports are out that Fox wants SmackDown to be more sports-oriented, not this character-driven, piece skits-oriented.
I think good characters are fine. I think ridiculous throwaway segments like we saw on Raw are the things you need to get rid of.
We all know Vince McMahon loves juvenile humor. So every time I see a piece skit, I know Vince was like, oh, this is really going to make him laugh, baby.
Well, we'll stay on that topic because They did it at Survivor Series. Everyone hated it. I mean, literally, other than small children, I don't think anyone got anything out of that.
The only people who find that funny are your 8 and 9-year-olds that find Pete jokes funny.
So they stick with it the next night on Raw, and they have these people cracking jokes about Drake Maverick, and some of the jokes were just awful in their own right. So now Drake's getting his revenge on Raw. And it leads to, I actually thought him stealing Bobby Roode's robe was kind of funny because someone made the joke that it looked like Kevin in Home Alone, like acting like a grown-up with Maverick, walking around with the robe. So, I mean, I enjoyed that, but at the end, it comes down to, okay, I could get a little bit behind Maverick stealing the robe. That's his payback, so on and so forth. When you literally have... that was actual title match, I believe, right? I think that was for the titles. I believe it was. Whether it was or wasn't, it was still involving your tag team champions and what's really at this point the number one contenders. You have that match concluding with a guy peeing on a robe, Bobby Roode being so distracted, and this dominant team like basically escaping with a cowardly victory. Everything was bad about it. It ruins both tag teams and it makes a mockery of the entire show, right? I mean, that's probably more than anything else, people are going to remember that from Monday night.
Well, the tag team division is already a joke, and I really don't think there's any saving it. There's just too much damage. I've told you this many times. I just don't care what tag team it is. They're done.
But you would not say anything similar to that about Smackdown, right? I mean, it's complete opposite on that show.
Yeah, I mean, SmackDown's very, top heavy, but. And I mean, there's just not many tag teams around, but the two best, well, actually, you could say the 3 best tag teams in the company are on SmackDown. AOP and the Revival, there's nothing wrong with those guys. They've just been booked to be kind of jokes. And AOP's been booked dominant, but when they're in the middle of their match, the whole match is taken away by somebody peeing on a robe. It makes a mockery of the in-ring performers and what they're trying to do out there. And Bobby Roode should not be a face. It ruins the character. Everything that was kind of special about him in NXT, which I'm not really a Bobby Roode fan. And when they got him, I was like, oh my God, Bobby Roode. I think he could serve a purpose in the mid-card.
He seemed like an IC or US Championship contender in how he was in NXT.
Well, what they're doing with him now is just, it makes him look like a joke.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was really bad because, again, it's going back to catering to small children, and Vince McMahon basically is the only person thinking that's funny. By the way, he also, I believe, was behind Elias, including a shot at Drake Maverick and his thing. So they're not just using it for that storyline. They're having other people take shots at it outside of that story. Something else that I thought was just brutally bad was Ronda and Nia. And it was more so Nia just being just so terrible on the mic. And I don't think she's ever been good. Her voice, I know you've said this before, it's hard to take her serious because she should be this like Braun Strowman-like character. Yet when you hear her talk, and when you see her on Total Divas and things of that, the two don't mesh. She's the complete opposite.
How many times have we seen Nia Jax cry on Total Divas and on like SmackDown or Raw or whatever she's on? I mean, she's not an intimidating figure. And if anything, I don't know. Even with the whole Becky and how she points to her fist now, it just comes off so cheesy. It's and then her partnering with Tamina. I mean, is there anybody more like blah than her? I mean, there is nothing exciting about it. She's the definition of boring. They call Lance Storm boring. No, she's boring. And
Lance Storm could work a good match.
He absolutely could.
So they're going forward now with Nia and Ronda. It's a difficult situation because we all remember 2 weeks ago fans were booing Ronda Rousey out of the building after she took a beating from Charlotte. So are they now going to completely flip and all support Ronda? A lot of them are because they really hate Nia Jax. But now you're kind of putting Ronda in a situation where she's not really the face that you thought she might be. And you're trying to make her cut promos. You're making Nia cut promos. That's certainly not her strength. It just seems like a feud that's could be disastrous, despite the fact that when they wrestled the first time, they had a killer match before it was interrupted. So I'm really not excited about this feud, even knowing that the match itself might be pretty darn good.
Yeah, I guess from reports, this is not the feud we were supposed to have. It was supposed to be her and, Natalya. But they decided once her dad tragically passed away, that they couldn't have her turn on Ronda because the fans wouldn't want to boo her, which I actually think is false. I think you could have, waited a couple weeks and still did the turn, and maybe she could have, used. You don't even need to bring her dad in the storyline, and still kind of did it and just kind of brushed that aside.
Which they're using her dad with the Ruby Riott storyline.
Right. I don't know why we always have to use real life stuff in storylines.
That's what I'm saying. I brought that up last week. It's unnecessary.
That passed away. It was tragic. Wrestling fans knew it. They mourned and move on. Don't use that. And in wrestling, they always do. Like Roman's leukemia. Okay, we know about it. Stop using it in a different feud where it means it just. I don't like it. You still could have had her turn. It would have saved us from Nia Jax being in another feud, and also the fact that she injured your top woman star. She was careless, and there's no punishment for it.
She gets a push from it.
Where it's like sometimes when somebody injures somebody, even it was of course an accident. Nobody purposely injures somebody. Some people get punished for it. Some don't. Like there's no rhyme or reason on why we're going to punish you for it, or we're not going to punish that person for it.
Right. You talked a little bit about the real life tragedies with Roman Reigns. If I'm correct, Dean Ambrose did not bring that aspect of it up on Raw, but he cut another bizarre promo, and Dean Ambrose is disappointing, and I don't know if it's his fault or if it's creative's fault. He seems like the absolute most basic heel now, where he's just insulting the crowds and insulting the fans and saying, you people, and I'm not coming to that city. That's not the Dean Ambrose heel that we were hoping for, right? I mean, his promo on Raw was just nothing short of bizarre as he was getting shots, and I don't know what the whole purpose of that was.
Why did he turn heel? Like, do we really, like, what's the purpose of his actions? Is he supposed to be the lunatic? Like, we don't know? Like, he just does whatever he wants because he's crazy?
He doesn't seem like he's acting that way right now.
But that was his whole gimmick, right? The lunatic
right.
bridge. I guess I should be involved in this feud. I don't really care. I don't hate it. I don't love it. But we've seen this already when Rollins was the heel, Ambrose was the face. So it's not like this is fresh. Like, man, this is the first time we're seeing these guys feud. We saw it like 2 years ago. Some time has passed, and now they're doing the reverse. It's just, I don't know.
Ambrose seems like a guy that just. He's always come up a little bit short of what you think that potential is. Maybe not his fault, but it just seems like he's never quite... I remember him and Lesnar, how excited I was for that feud. That disappointed me. He's never quite gotten over that hump, even though he's held the World Championship.
Well, remember, was it... I think, I could be wrong here. Wasn't it Steve Austin that came out when Ambrose was champion and said that he fell, like he dropped the ball? Like, somebody came out very critical of him. Like he got the chance to succeed, and he just dropped it. Whatever it was, there wasn't the magic there.
He's not a guy. I think the best version of Dean Ambrose isn't going to be a PG type character, right?
Maybe that hurt. Like people always compare him to Brian Pillman. Okay, I could see that comparison, but Brian Pillman wasn't a PG character. Maybe you just hit it right there. I never really thought of that. In the PG era, he's pigeonholed. And the best version of him we're never going to see because Vince and company will never allow it.
I just hate him cutting the most basic heel promos, insulting fans and insulting the cities and stuff. I mean, that's like a good shtick for Elias when he did it each and every week. It just seems like Ambrose should be more complex than that.
Jinder Mahal.
Right.
Insulting the people, not Dean Ambrose.
Dean Ambrose's opponent in the upcoming feud is going to be Seth Rollins. And, yeah, it should be a great match. Because Seth Rollins always has great matches. He had another one on Raw. But I know both you and I, Justin, when we saw Seth Rollins Open Challenge at 10 o'clock, this is going to finally be the good part of Raw. This is where the show is going to be saved. I will say it was a great match against Dolph Ziggler. But the second Dolph came out, I immediately said, I don't care how good the match is. I wanted someone different. And I enjoyed the match. But I'm thinking, man, Tyler Breeze, Apollo Crews, give someone a fresh opportunity. Give us a new matchup, something exciting, something that could maybe elevate a person who needs it. We got none of that. We got Ziggler, Rollins, round 12, and it was great, but it just didn't feel special.
Yeah, I remember when John Cena did the Open Challenge, how great that was from week to week. I mean, sometimes it was Sami Zayn coming from NXT, or when Kevin Owens, I think, answered. And
Yep.
And it always led to great matches. I mean, that was a chance, like you said, to get someone off the cuff. I saw a lot of people thought it would be Bray Wyatt because he, showed up at Starrcade and wrestled. And a lot of people were like, oh, it must be coming back. It's going to be Bray Wyatt. Which Bray Wyatt doesn't excite me either.
I saw people saying, because a lot of wrestlers tweeted saying, like, oh, I'll take you up on that. And, of course, there's a chance they actually get in trouble for doing something like that with how that company is.
Yeah,
but
I saw Apollo Crews tweet like, hey, I know I'm not doing anything.
Right, and Mustafa Ali. Now, I know, the casual fans don't know him, but how great would that have been to see like a Mustafa Ali or a Buddy Murphy or Cedric Alexander answer that challenge?
I think that would be a very entertaining match, but it's like, I swear like they don't even try. It's like, well, we don't care to impress the fans here. We'll just throw this out again. Are they going to have a good match? Yes, but how many, like you said, I think you were being nice when you said round 12. I think it's more than that.
Well, and the other thing is, what was I know you, after you saw that was going to be the match, you kind of just said, that's it for me, right?
Oh, I went to bed, yes.
You know what the main event was that night, right?
Yes, I do.
Finn and Corbin.
Which I love Finn.
But that's got to be about a dozen times, right?
That's not a main event. I'm sorry, it's just not. And I saw, which it's always the case on Raw. The every hour dips, but they lost about 600,000 viewers between the 8 o'clock hour and the 10 o'clock hour. And I would love to know exactly what that main event segment was. Like how many people tuned out.
So we have Finn and Corbin for the umpteenth time. We have Ziggler Rollins again. We started with Elias and Lashley. So your three like real big one-on-one men's matches were all repetitive and extremely repetitive. That's the issue. Like, I think Raw has done a good job where they give guys time to have good matches. But if you don't care about the matches, what's the point? And I think the women's division and the tag team division are just really bad now. So I really see very few bright spots on Raw on a weekly basis, and I could really not find any for Monday.
And when I saw the backstage promo with Bailey, Sasha, and Bliss talk about, well, come out and we're gonna take questions from the fans.
I thought that might be cool. It was bad.
I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be awful. And Bailey goes, this isn't gonna be This Is Your Life, is it? It's like it's even like they knew this was gonna be bad. Like, hey guys, this is gonna suck. If you want to tune in and see some sucking, tune right in, because we're gonna remind you of a segment that was awful. Let's see if we can top that coming up next.
They only had one question. They had one plan to ask a question, and
of course I didn't see it, but I knew that moment. I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna be awful.
We both agree SmackDown's usually better. I saw some people saying this was one of their favorite SmackDowns. I didn't think that, but I thought a lot of good was accomplished. Nothing bigger to me than the fact that Asuka might not be completely dead. She wins the Battle Royal, which is the main event. I don't really know that there's many other good contenders, to be honest. I think she's sort of in there by default because who else are you really going to put in there on SmackDown right now? But the fact that, there's some options, but I will say, like, the fans, I think, are starting to sense that Asuka's been screwed, and they have really been rallying behind her, starting at Survivor Series. It continued on SmackDown. I like Naomi, but Naomi, like, man, when she said Asuka's name, everyone cheered. When she said every other name, it was like crickets.
Yes.
So, like, creative has to know, like, people want to see Asuka, even if we end up making her take a pin or have her lose the match. They still want her to be in those bigger matches. She's going to get an opportunity. And a lot of people think, and I wouldn't be opposed to this, your main event at TLC should be Becky, Charlotte, and Asuka.
I'm okay with that, but I think it's going to be Bryan and AJ, which, I can't argue against that, but I can make an argument for the triple threat. Would I be upset if Asuka won? No. Especially the TLC match. Maybe you could do something where she pins Charlotte, so Becky kind of keeps her momentum without, losing and then still dropping the title. Because I do think they're starting to set up the Horseman match. I just kind of feel like that's going in motion now.
The problem with Asuka winning the title now is like, wouldn't you want her to build to that? It's sort of weird because it's like there's no in
There was an
between.
opportunity. There was the build to that, and then it was like, what? I don't think they don't care. They don't build anything. I do like it. It's fresh because when they originally announced the match, Charlotte and Becky again, I was like, okay. I mean, I'm excited. I think it's gonna be a good match, but I'm like, here we getting repetitive again. Like, do we need to see another match between those two? And then when the girls came out, I'm like, oh, this is actually clever. This is actually using logic. Why wouldn't these girls be upset that it's those two over and over again?
Right.
This makes complete sense. I like this. And then when they threw Asuka in there, I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. The three best women on the roster in a TLC match. I expect big things from them.
Right. And even if Asuka doesn't win and she maybe doesn't maintain this push, it'll be good to see, like, to your point, that there's another aspect to this match so it's not the same match over and over again.
Right.
A couple other quick things on SmackDown. Randy Orton has been like a red-hot heel over the past 6 months, but it always seems like he's playing sort of second fiddle to the main event. He's also been feuding with like other veterans of like his age, which is sort of weird because typically in wrestling, you want a veteran maybe working with someone younger to get those people over. Orton's gone from Jeff Hardy to now Rey Mysterio. So it's like, what are you really accomplishing? That being said, I think there's a lot of interest by fans because Orton's popular in a heel way, I guess. He's getting good heel heat, and Mysterio's extremely popular. They're doing the teasing of the mask. Is this ultimately going to lead to Mysterio being unmasked? Is it going to lead to a mask versus something match? And are you seeing really anything interesting coming out of this storyline? Because I like both these guys. It just seems sort of weird. I think they both could be used a little bit better with some younger guys to develop newer stars.
I'm not as high on Orton as you are. I mean, Hall of Famer, but the character, we've gone back and forth many times between each other. Solid wrestler, but he doesn't do much for me because of his style. His style isn't my favorite type of wrestling.
But do you like the really sadistic Randy Orton heel the best?
Yes. I do feel like, don't you feel like every other feud with Mysterio involves somebody trying to take his mask? I do think that gets overplayed with masked wrestlers, especially with Mysterio because he's been around so long.
Right.
I feel like there's been countless feuds where I'm like, oh, they're trying to take his mask. And he's not going to be unmasked. He came out after he did it in WCW, how he regretted that. He didn't want to do it, and the company made him. It's never going to happen. I don't know. I mean, I'll watch their match. I'm not, gung-ho about it. I think Mysterio's still very entertaining in the ring, even at his age.
He seems really good right now. I'm just concerned if he's going to be able to keep it up.
I'm concerned a year from now with the schedule that his knees are going to break down again. Absolutely.
I still think at some point, sooner rather than later, while he's still healthy, Mysterio has to go against Andrade Cien Almas, right? I mean, that just seems like it needs to happen to get Almas to that next level.
I would love to see that. Mysterio and Styles and Mysterio and Bryan. All combination. When he's still very, much able to go. I think for the fans, those are all type of dream match scenarios that would love to be played out.
We talked briefly about this, so we're not going to spend too much time. The Bar, the Usos, great match again. It always seems like SmackDown tag team matches deliver. There's no doubt that division is light years ahead of the Raw tag team division. But you made a point, and I think it's very accurate. It seems like it's the same teams over and over. And I know the Bar was sort of, on the back burner for a while. The New Day was in contention or had the titles. Of course, we had the Bludgeon Brothers before their injuries. So they're kind of just rotating, but it always seems like it circles around the same 2 or 3 teams over the span of 5 or 6 months. Do you want that to change, or do you still want to go with the best in-ring tag teams each and every time are going to be in these big matches on SmackDown?
That's very hard to say. It does feel old at times, but then you always know you're going to get a great match. But when is enough enough? I thought the New Day would have broke up a year ago, and sometimes I find them stale. Sometimes I still find them entertaining. We talk about bad comedy. For the most part, the New Day's comedy works.
Yes, I completely agree with that.
I would say 85 to 90% of the time, it works.
Even ridiculous stuff like the Thanksgiving feast match or whatever that they had, like they make that a lot better than other people do.
And I just think that their personalities, it just fits, because I think those guys are probably funny in real life, and that's why it comes across very good on the camera, because I think Big E's probably hilarious in real life.
Right, he is.
His moments on Total Divas are bright spots. But
do you have to do anything different? I mean, I think most people would agree trades throughout the year would solve a lot of problems. It would create some interest. How nice would it be for like the Usos to go to Raw right now? Wouldn't that? I mean, you hope at least that would spur a change on the Raw side.
An Usos versus AOP feud, wouldn't that freshen it up a little?
Or how about them against the Revival? I mean, that could be incredible. That might be your match of the year for tag team wrestling.
The problem is, though, with that match of the year, but then you got to build up the Revival enough to make them seem like legit threats to the Usos. Because now, if the Usos face them, you would think it should be almost a complete squash for the most part.
Well, yeah, Lucha House Party's beating the Revival every week, so.
Right.
So Raw really bad. SmackDown average, above average for SmackDown.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah. And there is a lot of reports that this is a time of year, especially with the injuries, that basically they're just trying to tread water until they get to the Royal Rumble. I mean, you can sort of see that. They're not really introducing. They've done a lot of heel and face turns, but it doesn't seem like it's a real exciting product week in and week out at this point. One thing that I thought was interesting was before Raw and SmackDown this week, last weekend, they had another live event special. Now, this one's a little bit different than Crown Jewel and Super Showdown. It was Starrcade, and you would know better than I, Justin, because you were much more of a WCW fan than I was. This was like a legendary WCW pay-per-view for a decade or so. WWE brought it back a year ago as basically a house show, and they did the same this year. It was on Saturday, and the next night, like 24 hours later, they showed like an hour condensed version of the show on the network. Does something like this interest you at all? What's the benefit of this? And is it sort of a miscarriage of what a great pay-per-view was to now make it a 1 hour special on the network?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not offended they use old WCW names. I mean, they did Bash of the Beach, too, for, a year or two, right? As a July pay-per-view for them. Now they use War Games in NXT, and that's a WCW concept.
But that seems like a big deal when they do that, at least, right?
Well, they make it. I'll be honest. I didn't even know Starrcade was happening. I saw like I saw like Charlotte. Somebody retweeted Charlotte and showed up on my Twitter feed, and I'm like, huh? Like oh. And then I'm like, oh, okay, it's a house show that they're calling Starrcade for the house. I was like, oh, okay, they're trying to do ticket sales. And then I read that they're actually they're taping it and airing it. I was like, I had no clue in the world that it was even airing on the network.
And I'm showing a picture of Elias and Ric Flair. They had their little concert. That was part of it.
Yes, I saw that. And I mean, I guess the big thing that kind of happened was Bray Wyatt made a return.
Right.
Which I guess it's somewhat of a big deal. I mean, he comes and goes every couple months anyway. But he came back. It's not even mentioned on TV. And it's just like, okay. It's just weird.
And by the way, we talked a few weeks ago. Nikki Cross was never seen again after that match over in England. You remember how I said, like, is she going to stick around? So it seems like such a lapse in short-term and long-term thinking with this company. Like, they put someone on TV, then a week from then they don't know what to do with them. Or, like you said with Bray Wyatt, they bring him back for this thing, but then people read about it. You got to make that apparent on TV, right?
But no, this company has no idea what they're doing. I swear, they really don't. It's just whatever, whenever. It's amazing. Like, go back to Raw real quick. Like, No Way Jose, he comes out. I think I texted you. I swear to God, I forgot he was even on the roster, and I'm not exaggerating. Like, he just shows up, and I'm like, oh yeah, him. Yeah, I forgot about him.
Which guarantees people aren't going to care about the match.
Right, like. I'm somebody who knows what's going on, and I'm like, oh, that guy, And, I mean, I feel sorry for the crowd who paid, to go to that show. I mean, talk about a waste of money. It's just their booking week to week is just like, what do you want to do? Oh, I don't know. And I really think they know it's December. People aren't going to watch. I mean, what do you think Raw is going to be like on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve? How bad are those shows going to be?
Yeah, well, last year they tried to do it up with John Cena and everything, but yeah, I mean, it might be a lost cause at this point.
Right,
You know.
right. I think so.
So, last thing I want to touch on, and it's outside of the WWE realm in a sense, it's NXT UK. And I have not seen it yet, but I'm very interested at some point catching up. I have a lot of things that I need to catch up on. First question, have you watched NXT UK? Second, your thoughts on the news that they will have a pay-per-view upcoming or a special event, whatever you want to call it. And it seems as though they will be getting one of the biggest previously unsigned stars in the entire wrestling industry now seemingly joining that brand.
Yeah, to answer your question, no, I have not watched NXT UK. It's just there's just too much wrestling to go around, and I don't have enough time to dedicate my life that much to wrestling to, watch all that.
Seems like it gets good reviews, though, right?
Yes, I think it's an NXT product with amazing. Some of the wrestlers that are signed there are amazing wrestlers, and I like them. I just can't, always fit it in. I like the UK getting a pay-per-view. If the UK got a regular pay-per-view, I would be okay with that. The UK fans are pretty hardcore. They're always good crowds. They deserve a pay-per-view. I have no problem with it. The hard part is the time difference. That's why I don't think they get one, because when it would be live there, it doesn't match up with our time.
Right.
Getting Walter or whatever. From what I read, it's like a part-time almost. Like, he's not moving from Germany. He's not coming to Orlando. He's going to fly occasionally to the UK, do some shows, because he still wants to live his life in Germany. He doesn't want to move. He doesn't want to move his family.
Which it seems like a great deal for WWE, because they get a huge name for a promotion that probably would really benefit from a huge name. NXT doesn't need more huge names. The main roster doesn't need necessarily more huge names. But I think 205 Live and NXT UK are still in search of those big names.
Well, I think right now they're just trying to conquer that market. I mean, apparently, I guess originally most of the people signed to NXT UK could still wrestle for other companies.
Which we saw Pete Dunne do a number of times.
Right. But now, apparently, recently, they are now signing people to full-term, exclusive NXT UK deals. And it's like, what? They just want to kill off any other wrestling promotion ever. Like, Vince's idea is not to have good wrestling. It's just to make sure that they're the only wrestling. And this way, you have to watch them. We don't have to be good, but we could just sign everybody and kill every other wrestling promotion. I hate that. I think that's actually horrible for wrestling. Guys should. It sucks. And I understand why these guys are signing, because of the money, and yet you never see them again. Like, they'll sign a 3-year contract, maybe work 2 months, a year, like on TV, and just do house shows, but they can't pass up on the money, even though it hurts their career in the long run, because people don't know who they are anymore. They lose what interest they have. I guess it's good for them. I don't know what kind of a big deal it's going to be. Time will tell on that, but I think they have enough talent that they didn't need him. I think it's just a showman of riches. And
would he be the type of guy that you're going to tune in to watch an episode of NXT UK to see?
Try. Like, when I find out, he taped a show and it's going to air on this date. Okay, I even do that with regular NXT. I don't watch every NXT. If there's something
Matt Riddle wrestling a match, for instance.
Right, I want to tune in and see what they're going to do with him. I'm intrigued by that. And I'll watch. And, maybe after a couple times I'll see, okay, now I don't need to tune in. I got the idea. I like it, I don't like it, but I got the idea. They have too much talent. They're wasting too many people, and it sucks for the wrestling community. And that's why, I've been praying for the last 10 years that a second promotion pops up. And, we can only hope, right?
Keep praying, Justin. Keep praying.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for this week's edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Promote the Twitter, of course, 5-Star Pod Wrestle. Also check out our YouTube channel. I do want to reiterate, had an interview up with Bob Orquist, Bobby O as he's known. That was on Monday. You could check that out about their big show upcoming this weekend. They're going to have Nick Aldis defending the NWA title, as well as Corey Graves' little brother, Sam Adonis. J.J. Dillon, also the Hall of Famer, will be there on Saturday. But for Justin Lowery, this is Sean Meyers signing off. You've been watching another edition of the 5 Star Podcast of Wrestling. We'll catch you again next week.